This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
It's the aesthetic edition of the Hindsight 20 podcast. What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? I am your host, Jerry Mallory of the Hindsight 20 podcast. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. As always, a proud member of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, a proud member of PrideDetroit.com. Like I said, it's the aesthetic edition. And so we're going to talk about things outside of the actual play on the field. It's the bells and whistles. It's the look. You know, we love our cars and we love what the engine and the transmission, we love what's under the hood, but what's outside is important as well. The color, the body, the shape, the features now with GPS and Wi-Fi and, you know, the paint job that's specialized in your rims. The aesthetic of a car is important too. Now, with football, not as important of what goes on the field, but there's been a few news pieces. I'll give my spiel on those. You know, the cheerleaders, the rumors of new logos, and even the Q rating of a few of our players. And yes, we will talk about some things pertaining to on the field as well. Before you go any further, you already know what to do. Subscribe, Podbay, subscribe if you got iTunes. It's the best thing going. And when it's June and it's the dog days of the NFL, there's no training camp. The draft is gone. Free agency is gone. You know, perhaps a few players will be getting cut here and there. But when it's the dog days like this, but we can still pump out, in our opinion, high quality news, views, and opinions on the Detroit Lions, you know where to go. And it's not just myself. It's the whole cast and crew. We're all pumping out to the best of our abilities. Despite being, you know, a little lull in, you know, professional sports right now, we're still pumping out hits. All right. We'll still crank out the tunes each and every week. And so do us a favor and subscribe, keep checking us out. Let's talk about a few news and notes before we get into the aesthetic side of the Detroit Lions. The first piece is Anquin Bolden, who came into town. They took a look at him. He's one of those guys that, being a veteran, and I'm sure he'll show up in great shape, will miss a portion of, if not all of training camp, and he'll sign on with the team. The Lions are in the mix. Keep in mind, now, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim Caldwell was the offensive coordinator, I know this, of the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, and Anquin Bolden was there. And so they've had a look at him. They've seen him before. And there's a couple of teams that are interested. The Ravens supposedly want to give him another shot, and the San Francisco 49ers. Been hearing some things about the Dolphins as well. My spiel on it is this. It's indicative of our position right now in terms of depth. Our first three receivers, I feel like it's set. You know, I feel comfortable saying that Marvin Jones and Golden Tate and TJ Jones, that's 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be the way it is. But number 4 is kind of shaky. And if anyone has to worry, it's Corey Fuller. I think he'll be shown the door. He'll be released because you've got Anquin Bolden coming in. You've got Andre Roberts, Andre Caldwell. They want a veteran at that 4th spot, it looks like. And it looks like Corey Fuller has just not shown enough to justify keeping him. It's true. He's got good straight line speed, but there's so much more, okay, to playing football and playing the wide receiver position than a guy who can run fast. And he's just never quite put it all together. I think his spot is over. And one of these guys, whether it be Caldwell, Roberts, or Bolden, will probably snag up that last spot. With Jay Lee being the dark horse, I wouldn't be surprised if Jay Lee, undrafted free agent out of Baylor, winds up on the roster. But if not, I think his spot is secure on the practice squad for this year with a chance to move up to the big boys in the following year. Anquin Bolden is old, though, guys, and it's kind of funny. You don't realize how long a guy's been in the league until you start comparing him with other guys that got drafted the same year who have not been in the league for several years. I'm at work, and one of my buddies, he says, obviously Lions, and he goes, Anquin Bolden, he got drafted with Calvin, right? And Calvin's retiring and Bolden's still playing. I said, no, man, he didn't get drafted with Calvin. He played and got drafted before Calvin. And my first instinct was to say he got drafted with Roy Williams, which would be about 4 years before Calvin, roughly. And so we're talking. He's like, no, he didn't get drafted with Roy Williams, did he? I'm like, yeah, he did. Then I thought again. I said, no, wait. It wasn't Anquin Bolden. It was Larry Fitzgerald that got drafted with Roy Williams. Anquin Bolden was drafted the year before. Now, this is the throwback. Who did Anquin Bolden get drafted with in terms of the Detroit Lions? It was a wide receiver. It was not Mike Williams. No, it predated that. Anquin Bolden came into the league the same year that the Detroit Lions drafted, wait for it, Charles Rogers, number 2 overall. That shows how long Anquin Bolden has been in the league. That was 2003, all right? 13 years ago, he was picked in the second round, 54th pick by the Arizona Cardinals, and he had a very successful career, as we all know. But the man's 35. He's up there. You think about Charles Rogers, who's been, out of the NFL for quite some time, and a lot of that was not because of the age, but even if he had a productive and professional-esque career, you can conceivably say that anyone of a skill position, after about 13 seasons, they're still playing, it's a miracle. It's not a guarantee. Anquin Bolden's still getting it done. I remember his first game. It was against the Detroit Lions. We were all hyped and ready because Charles Rogers' first game, and so you're looking to see what the local product is going to do. And Charles Rogers had a good game. Correct me if I'm wrong, he had 2 touchdowns, but this other guy, this second-round pick, Anquin Bolden, looked just as good. Someone that, was kind of under the radar. I want to say he had a touchdown or 2, and he went on to have a very successful career. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year that year, and, he's been to the Pro Bowl several times. Actually, going to the Pro Bowl in 2003, his rookie year, he went 06 and 08. So what does he have left in the tank? Probably not a ton, but probably enough. If you're asking him to be the 4th guy, another big body, like I said, after Marvin Jones, and Marvin Jones isn't huge, but he's a bigger guy, in terms of height at least. We're small, all right? This is where I want to see Jay Lee step up. And if we're deciding between Anquin Bolden, Andre Roberts, and Andre Caldwell, I hope it's Anquin Bolden. We need a little bit more size. Our tight ends are big, that's great, but our receiving core after Marvin Jones at this point, it's a little bit thin. Moving on, speaking of receiving options, not at wide receiver, but Eric Ebron, more and more talk about his role, how it's going to increase. Well, it's a given, but what is it actually going to amount to? Now, there is a chance where someone gets an increased role and they look even worse. It's the old Ramon Santiago theory, and the Lions, despite not being a baseball team, have seen this a time or two, but I love, using this example of Ramon Santiago. Pinch hitter, played the infield for the Detroit Tigers, a little shortstop, a little second base. And when Santiago came in as a pinch hitter and as a utility man, and when he kind of subbed in every now and then, he looked great. He was a 300 guy. He had the speed. He flashed the leather. But when he got an expanded role and they tried about 2 or 3 different iterations of, let's make Ramon Santiago our everyday guy, at shortstop or second base, wherever it was, it didn't work. He looked bad. Some guys are most effective in small doses. The more usage they get, the more they're exposed, the more their flaws stand out, and they can't really handle the rigors of a full season. I'm not saying that's the case for Eric Ebron, but it could be. And we all know the other side of that coin. A guy that's been held back. We're hoping, and I think this is going to be the case with Marvin Jones. I feel like Marvin Jones is someone who has been held back, playing behind A.J. Green, kind of battling with Mohamed Sanu for touches. Then Tyler Eifert comes on to the scene, a healthy young tight end getting plenty of targets last year. Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard. There's so many weapons for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Marvin Jones was held back. With an added role, with more usage, I'm expecting him to do better. I think the same can be said for Ebron, but I got a closer eye on him, if you will. I'm looking at him a little bit closer. I'm a little bit more worried to see, with an improved role, how good will Eric Ebron be? You got to worry about the drops. You got to worry about the blocking. And so, Calvin being gone, it's time for Ebron to step up. Can he? Will he? That remains to be seen. I will be honest, I'm a little bit more comfortable in a guy like Marvin Jones, who, to me, in the short span and the short amount of targets that he gets, he makes the most of it. We'll wait and see with Eric Ebron. I don't want to just automatically say it's not going to pan out, but I've got my eye on him. A lot of talk, though, not just from him, you can even look at fantasy rankings. It's that time of year, okay? fantasy football right around the corner. I'm a degenerate. I'm like in 4 different leagues. We got crazy, WWE championship looking belts in this big auction league I'm in, which I love. So much fun. You start reading articles, fantasy wise, and different podcasts. Ebron getting a lot of love. Out goes Calvin, another year for Ebron in the system. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. The last piece, Brandon Copeland. It's a good story. That veteran combine, I don't want to call it a joke, but it was kind of a joke, okay? Not a lot of guys made the cut. I think like 2,000 applied, only 100 made it. Maybe 15 out of those like made a team. Only like 2 of them end up being on a team past week 1. Copeland was one of those guys who was on his way to the Arena League in Orlando just to keep his football playing career alive. Now he's in position to be one of the primary backups at defensive end. Big contributor last year on special teams, played a lot of linebacker. He's bulked up, supposedly without losing, speed and agility. And so we know our 2 defensive ends. You've got Ziggy Ansah and you've got Devin Taylor. After that, it's going to be a battle. 2 defensive ends behind them should get significant playing time. It's 3 guys really fighting for that. Between Anthony Zettel, rookie out of Penn State, Wallace Gilberry, veteran defensive end that we signed from Cincinnati, and Brandon Copeland, who it's a cool story. The veteran combine, some of those numbers were bad. It was kind of sad and pathetic. You look at guys like, whoever you want to name, they look like superheroes. And then just 2 years removed from the league. And it's like, guys that were running 4.40s now running 4.8s. It was bad. And it's a reason why it didn't pick up steam. The guys just didn't really look that good. Brandon Copeland, maybe he is the exception. We'll have to wait and see. Don't worry, guys. We're going to get back to football, what goes on, on the field of play in just a moment. But what we want to do right now is talk about a few aesthetic things pertaining to the Detroit Lions, the cheerleaders, potential of changing in uniform, my opinion of the uniform as a whole, even ranking it with other Detroit professional sports teams, and yes, the Q rating. It's all about the Q rating. I've got your official Detroit Lions Q rating 1 through 5. So the cheerleaders is the big thing. It's a big deal. Obviously not a big deal in terms of, the field of play, but it was only a handful of teams that did not have cheerleaders. Supposedly William Clay Ford was adamant, did not want them. Well, he's been gone for a little bit now. Martha Firestone Ford is taking over. Rod Wood getting a lot of control, doing a lot of things outside of football as the president. And he said everything is on the table. Uniforms, cheerleaders, and here we are. Remember the Detroit Pride? You go to a tailgate, the Detroit Lions, it was like the unofficial cheerleaders. And then, they dressed up in the Lions colors and they did a calendar. Well, it got huge reception because, I think the absence of a cheerleader made the want of a cheerleader stronger than people just merely wanting a cheerleader to have a group of them, if that makes any sense. It's like, maybe Johnny is not crazy about, eating an apple. Okay. He has other pieces of fruit he likes more. He likes bananas more and grapes and oranges. But once his mom says, you can't have this apple, now Johnny wants the apple more than any other fruit. I think that's kind of what happened with the cheerleaders. The fact that they were so adamant, we're not going to have them. It was a tradition and a team that's steeped in negative tradition. And so the change, bringing them in, kind of signifies something more than just, okay, you have cheerleaders now. What kind of irritates me is, there's a sector of Lions fans where you can't win for losing. All right. You can't win for losing with some of these guys. It could be a story, right? And it could be the complete opposite result. You could have result as A, and you could have a result all the way to Z. And they're going to have an equally negative response because they're negative, because their narrative on the Lions is negativity. For example, all these years, we haven't had cheerleaders. We'll use Johnny again. Now he's an adult. I've just been using this fictitious name. So now Johnny's an adult. And for the last 10 to 15 years, he's been disappointed with us, our results on the field, as all of us have. But another big gripe of his is the lack of cheerleaders. Oh, we could at least have, some eye candy to look at while we're losing. The other teams that don't have them are rich in tradition, but they're good teams, not the Lions. Let's bring some girls out there. Let's have a little dance crew. At least while we're losing 50-0, to the Packers, we can have some girls to look at, right? That's Johnny's spiel. That's kind of how he feels about the situation. Now that we have the cheerleaders, instead of him saying, okay, it's about time, at least we can look at something while we're losing, he doesn't say that. Johnny says, oh, this is pathetic. We need to focus on winning. It's just, to me, it's weak. Do you honestly feel as though Rod Wood bringing in cheerleaders is some type of way going to prohibit the team from focusing on winning? Even on Pride Detroit, I saw someone say, oh man, instead of cheerleaders, I really would have liked if we tried to pick up some linemen in the offseason. Well, we drafted like 5 linemen in the offseason, okay? I'm not here saying cheerleaders is the best thing ever. I'm a little bit indifferent. It'd be cool to have. I don't really care. When I'm at Ford Field, I'm so focused and just like, I'm into the game so much. A cheerleader or not really doesn't matter to me. I do like that it kind of signifies the continual change, in philosophy, in ownership. It stays in the family, the Ford family, but there's been some changes. And perhaps that means not so much loyalty to ineffective coaching staffs. Just the changes alone, maybe it means we will see some differences. We know the stats and the years of ineptitude and not going places. Perhaps, a move like this is a gesture saying, yes, we are different. But one thing about it, they mentioned that they're going to be low profile. What does that even really mean? Like, low profile? I mean, you're a cheerleader or you're not. I know Detroit is known. We're hard-nosed. We're workers. We, big construction, big into automobile plants. But, I mean, you want your cheerleaders in hard hats and safety vests and goggles? Or, what does that mean? Not quite sure, but, you want cheerleaders to look like cheerleaders. And so hopefully this low-profile thing they're talking about doesn't go out of hand. So, now, gridiron has been the main attraction when we score touchdowns. And you got those dudes that run out with the flags that spell Lions. And when they make that circle, and depending on what side of the field you're on, it goes from saying Lions to saying Snoil. Well, they'll be joined. Yes, Mr. Gridiron, you will, you're going to have a little competition in terms of off-the-field entertainment. Maybe they want to get creative and get a dancing usher like the Detroit Pistons have. That guy is pretty cool. No matter what they do. Now, at some point, and there's been talks about names, I like main attraction, like MANE attraction, main attraction. I don't know if someone's come up with that already or it's just one I thought of. Whatever, main attraction would be my choice. They got to at least come out and do a routine to this right here, at least once, all right? I mean, come on, right? At least once. I know this isn't, 95.5. You're probably not expecting to listen to a Lions podcast and hear Katy Perry, but it kind of fits. They're girls and they're going to be dancing and, the song is called Roar. I mean, just once, right? If I can give my little 2 cents on the whole thing, they should be called main attraction. They should not be, super low profile. They shouldn't have to try to mimic the city of Detroit and be like construction based, or they shouldn't come out like, in automobiles. And they got to at least do one routine to Katy Perry's Roar. Am I right? Huh? Am I right? Before we move on from that, I will say this to you negative Nancy's or whatever you want to say. Just ease up, okay? If you don't like cheerleaders, it's not a big, so what? Don't look at them. Don't pay attention to them. The negativity, it's going to be there. Some guys are going to be negative no matter what. But it's that can't win for losing mentality that it just kind of gets to me. Now, the other change that they kind of rumored to be considering up for grabs next year is a change in uniform. Rod Wood said everything is on the table, not just a modification or an update, but perhaps a whole new color scheme. And I think we touched on this briefly months ago when a news report came out. But first of all, I don't like the Lions logo, okay? I don't know what's worse, Bubbles or the current logo that we have. Now, picture yourself looking at that Lions logo. My issue with it is not the mouth. I do like that they gave the lion, a little bit, a growling looking mouth with some teeth. You can kind of see some claws a little bit more so than Bubbles, the old logo. They look like he was jumping through a hula hoop. It's those little squiggly, squirrely lines, the accented white lines that they give to him in the leg region and then near the mane. I get what they're trying to do, give him a more focused outline, but it looks amateurish, man. Every time I see a Lions logo, and I love my team, I've got jerseys and hats. Certain angles, it just looks like a little kid kind of added those lines. It doesn't look like a professional, clean logo, in my opinion. Of the four major sports, I would say it's in last place. If I'm ranking them, I've got the Tigers as number one. That old English D, you can't beat it. Red Wings, the winged wheel, it's classic. Pistons, they had some rough years with the teal and the horse head, back to the red, white, and blue, which is good. They're kind of in need of an update, as well. I mean, the logo of the Lions is in dead last. I'd be completely against a whole new color scheme. This team has been around forever. The last 50 or so plus years, we're used to Honolulu blue and silver. I think it looks nice. It's sleek. It's separate from any other team. You kind of see that, and you know it's the Lions. The Panthers are close. They kind of got like but theirs is more electric blue and black. But the Lions colors are classic. Uniwatch.com, they're known for logo updates, and people do submitted logos. There are some pretty cool ones they did for the Lions once it was talked about them potentially having a new uniform. And so do yourself a favor and Google that. Check it out. It'll be a pretty good watch. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, one last segment in terms of aesthetics. I'm going to give you a top 5 Q rating for the Detroit Lions. And then we're going to end it with a very early depth chart. Well, not quite a depth chart, more of a starting lineup. Your 22 offensive and defensive players. I'll give you who I'm predicting each position to go to when opening day kicks off against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. All right, so stay tuned to the Hindsight 20 as we'll take a quick break and then talk more Lions. Jerry Mallory here for the Hindsight 20 podcast. It's simple. If you want your ad to be placed on our show, just send us an email, hindsight20podcast@gmail.com. All right, we're back on the Hindsight 20. I want to thank you for staying with us for the second half. It's a musical theme on today's show. I don't know if you kind of picked up who the artist was. I just played them there. I just opened up the show, but it's one of my favorites. They're known as Thrice. Not once, not twice, but thrice. I've been listening to them for quite some time now. You go back, I don't know, maybe 13 years almost, 2003-ish. And they were featured as one of the songs on a Madden football game. Yeah, right, Jerry, playing Madden football. Who would have thunk it? Anyways, the song was nice. I enjoyed it. And so I said, man, I want to check these guys out. I did, bought that album, bought the next one, 4, 5, 6 albums later, seeing them in concert 4, 5, 6 times, even meeting the lead singer after one of the shows. Like I said, one of my favorite groups of all time. And it's cool because they have a new album coming out and they're coming to town this Wednesday. I will be there. I'll be in the house at the Fillmore. Thrice doing their thing. They went on a little hiatus and now they're back. This is a crazy year for concerts, man, especially like for me. I'm all over the place with my musical taste, but some of my favorite artists have already stopped in town this year or will be coming up. Now, I won't be able to go to all these shows. Would love to, but hey, other responsibilities. Man, concerts are so expensive these days. Like, dude, you've got to be like just straight up rich to afford to go to all of these shows. All right. And, but anyway, some of those artists that have already been or are coming that are definitely favorites of mine. You've got Florence and the Machine, Guns N' Roses, Alice in Chains. I really want to go to this one Thursday. Don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. I'm a huge fan of Alice in Chains. Being a little bit too young to ride the wave when Lane Staley was alive and around with them, their former front man. I was just a little bit too young to enjoy them at their peak of their hiatus, but I still love to see them, perform live to this day. They'll be coming to Ford Field with Guns N' Roses this Thursday. The aforementioned Thrice, the Killers were just over the border. They're in Windsor. Coldplay's coming. Billy Talent, huge fan of them. Even the comedic musical duo via the Concords, they're coming to town. So I'm expecting to go to the Billy Talent one. I'll probably try to pop in and see Coldplay, and we'll see how the rest falls. No matter what you're a fan of, it seems like every big artist, a lot of notable names, a wide range of musical artists have come to town, to Detroit, in the past year, especially in this year, 2016. I know I'm rambling on. Back to football. I could have a music podcast, I'm telling you, because I'm really just into, sports and music, man. It's my thing. And so, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing Thrice live and in concert this Wednesday at the Fillmore. So, the last little piece of our aesthetic podcast of the Detroit Lions before we get into our starting lineup, if you will, predicted for game one, is the Q rating. What is a Q rating, Jerry? Well, I'll give you the Wikipedia definition. Like Michael Scott from The Office said, hey, Wikipedia, if it's on Wikipedia, it's got to be true. So Q rating, also known as Q score, is a measurement of the familiarity and appeal of a brand, celebrity, athlete, company, or entertainment product used in the United States. The higher the Q score, the more highly regarded the item or person is among the group familiar with them. Q ratings and other variants are primarily used by the advertising, marketing, media, and public relations industry. So the Lions took a big hit in the Q rating department when you, in 2 off seasons, lose big Nike, Oregon, behemoth Ndamukong Suh. All right, everyone knows about Suh. He's the man. You lose him, and then Megatron. I mean, one of the best receivers of all time, one of the best in the generation. Phenomenal, probably the best nickname in sports, even though it's not original. It's awesome. You lose those 2 guys, you take a huge hit. And they were probably 1 and 2. If you're doing Q rating, probably Calvin, followed by Ndamukong Suh. But hey, the players that we have now, they're not mince meat. We have a couple of guys that are very noticeable. So I'm going to be giving you the Q rating starting from 5 and working our way up to number 1, who has the highest Q rating, according to yours truly, Jerry Mallory. So number 5 is a 2-way tie. You've got Haloti Ngata and you've got Ziggy Ansah. Now Ziggy is climbing up the charts. All right, he's a big man. He's got a cool name. Pro Bowler, he's from Africa. He wore those cool 3D glasses when he got drafted. Really good personality. And I think he's starting to come into his own, being known as a force. And I'm talking about Q ratings in the NFL universe, all right? Not so much like E! Magazine or, Media Takeout or TMZ, but in the NFL universe, if you will. Now, Haloti Ngata, his Q rating is up there with Ziggy because of his history, playing on one of the more popular teams in the Baltimore Ravens for so many years and being effective, being one of their best players, always in the hunt, Super Bowl champion. Haloti Ngata has seen his fair share of Sunday night and Monday night football, playoff games, very recognizable, big man. The name always plays a role, I'm telling you, in this Q rating. He's got the weird name, Ngata, with a G, mixed in there. And so his Q rating is falling and Ziggy's is ascending. But at this point, they've met each other, kind of like Benjamin Button. One was getting older, one was getting younger, and they met in the middle at like 40 years old. Well, Haloti Ngata and Ziggy Ansah, they're getting their Benjamin Button on. They're meeting in the middle. Number 4 is Eric Ebron. He's got the flashy hair and he's got the big mouth. He's, it's part of that young generation. He's kind of part of that Odell Beckham generation, the Nene generation. You can always find him on Twitter, big emoji guy. And yes, being a 10th pick, pick before Odell and Aaron Donald. He's kind of a lightning rod of attention. And, people want to label him a bust. And he's flashy, especially for his position. He's got the speed and his Q rating. A lot of people talking about him now in comparison to, what he'll do in comparison to the absence of Calvin Johnson. His Q rating is slowly growing, and he's in that number 4 spot. 3, this guy's ascending big time. It's Darius Slay. He's just a treat to listen to, man. So entertaining. Again, his Twitter presence, always saying something funny. It seems like he's a good interview. If you heard the whole Beyonce concert comments he made during one of the practices, I got to be at the Beehive, man. I got to look good for my girl, no disrespect to Jay-Z. He seems like a fun-loving guy. We know he's about to get paid, all right? Drew Rosenhaus is his agent. He's one of the best at his position in the league. He's a super athletic dude. He plays cornerback. It's one of those sexy positions. Everything's lining up for this guy. Darius Slay's got it going on. He's about to get paid. He's very entertaining. He's personable when he's interviewed. He interacts with the fans on Twitter. So he's got all those things going for him. He's number 3. Number 2 in our Q rating is DeAndre Levy. The beard goes a long way. And just like with James Harden, who's probably made millions of dollars because of the beard, Levy hasn't made big money. You don't see him in a ton of advertisements, but he's a recognizable force. The play on the field is there. You go to snub Pro Bowl list and he's all over the place. Or you go to, this guy is primed to go to the Pro Bowl in this upcoming year. He's all over the place. And so his recognizability, that's not a word. I can't think of it, brain fart, but the level of which he's recognized in the NFL is very high because of the beard. And then you've got his weird antics. He's like kind of the Dos Equis of the NFL. You'll see him on a camel somewhere in the Middle East. You'll see him, in Chile or Peru, bungee jumping, flying out of airplanes, a wing walker, if you will, always doing something wild. And then it's the whole spiel with CTE. He's been like coming at the NFL. He has not been bashful. He has been very vocal on his displeasure about how the NFL has handled what is such an important issue now. He's almost becoming one of the main and most vocal spokespeople in the NFL, anti-establishment, against the league and how they've been handling CTE. So his stock is growing. And the number one is Stafford. Okay. Number one pick in the draft. You see him on a ton of commercials on ESPN and this and that. It's the quarterback. All right. He's kind of got the celebrity wife in Kelly Stafford, who's kind of become a media socialite. All right. If we're talking about the Lions, he is indeed the most noticeable. He's number one on the Q ratings Detroit Lions list. Okay. We're going to close the show out with, like I said, my early projected starting lineup for the Detroit Lions. Week 1 versus the Indianapolis Colts. I plan on being there doing an epic road trip with a few buddies. And when they roll out the field, injury aside, we know that can always put a monkey wrench in the situation, if you will. These are the guys I expect to start. All right. We'll go with offense first and then give commentary, go with defense, give commentary. And that's how we'll do it. We'll also do kicker, punter, punt return, kick return. So quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Running back, Amir Abdullah and Theo Reddick. Number 1 receiver, Marvin Jones. Number 2, Golden Tate. I've got a slash here. 3rd wide receiver / fullback, Michael Burton, TJ Jones. Offensive line, Taylor Decker. Left tackle, left guard, Larry Warford. Center, my boy Graham Glasgow. Right guard, Laken Tomlinson. Right tackle, Riley Reef. So let's talk about a few of these positions. I've got to start by Graham Glasgow's name. That must mean I have to talk about it. That must mean that there's probably some dispute. You read reports, Travis Swanson is ahead of him. Even Gabe Akard is ahead of him. That's fine. The technical aspect and the mental aspect, those guys have an advantage over him. Maybe this will be the case for all time. But I think a lot has to do with his inexperience. Center is a hard position to grasp. You're expected to do a lot. And so he's behind the curve on that. But guess what? They have not put on pads yet. And once they do, I think he's going to be physical enough. He's going to have such an advantage from that standpoint and smart enough, grasping the game enough to where the gap between physicality and strength, when you want to run that ball and protect Stafford, is going to be a lot further than that gap in understanding and that gap of adapting to the mental side between him and Travis Swanson. So when it's all said and done and opening day rolls around, I'm expecting 2 draft picks to be starting on that offensive line. Taylor Decker on the left side, Graham Glasgow as the center. And yes, the Reef versus Decker thing, I don't think it's an experiment. I don't think it's a let's see what's going to happen. Taylor Decker's going to come in, and he's going to be that left tackle from day one. Other news and notes on that one, Burton and TJ Jones. I guess it depends on how they roll out. I've got 2 running backs, a lot of 2 running back sets I could see them using, but Theo Reddick, Michael Burton, TJ Jones, they'll be thrown in different ways. And I could, it's weird in football because, a starter isn't really a starter. It's just about who gets the most snaps. All of those guys considered, Theo Reddick will get the most snaps, followed by TJ Jones, Michael Burton. Michael Burton was considered statistically one of the best fullbacks in the league. You heard rumors that when he was drafted, Green Bay wanted him, successful franchises. I always like to hear that our picks were coveted by successful franchises. In his rookie year, Michael Burton as a fullback was rated like top 3. And so that's That's very promising. Hopefully that continues. Now, moving on to defense, defensive end, you got Ziggy Ansah, then defensive tackle, Talodi Nada, your other defensive tackle, Teron Walker, defensive end, the other guy, Devin Taylor. Linebacker, you've got outside, it's DeAndre Levy. Middle linebacker, you've got Tahir Whitehead. And then your other outside linebacker, if everything holds true, Kyle Van Noy. Your two cornerbacks, Darius Slay and Nevin Lawson. Free safety is Glover Quinn. Strong safety, Raphael Bush. Let's look at this. No, A'Shawn Robinson did not crack the starting lineup. He'll be a rotational guy. You'll get plenty of love. Him, Karan Reed, Stephon Charles. It's a loaded spot, man. And I didn't even mention Gabe Wright. But starting off, I think Nada, holds on to his spot as well as Teron Walker. So it's interesting. Now, Kyle Van Noy, how much will he play? He's kind of like a slash as well. It's going to be some Kyle Van Noy. It's going to be a lot of nickel cornerback as well with Quandre Diggs. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. At strong safety, a lot of people probably clamoring or calibrating, whatever. However you pine for something, a lot of people are going to be calibrating, salivating, and clamoring for Miles Killebrew out of Southern Utah. Recent draft pick. You look at the highlights in the youth. But Raphael Bush, when healthy, should be the best option in year one. And look out for Isaiah Johnson, who's been looking really good so far. He's looking to make his mark and get a shot as well. Special teams, your punter, Sam Martin. Your kicker is Matt Prater. TJ Jones should be your punt returner. At kick returns, at this point, Amir Abdullah, he was number 2 in terms of yardage. I don't want him really doing that because, he's a valuable guy that we need already with the shoulder issues, with surgery. But at this point, unless something changes, he's going to be your kick returner. It's been a fun show, guys. A lot of aesthetics. We did our whole little cheerleader spiel, and we did our Q rating spiel. Those things were fun, even talking about the uniforms, but can't have a show without the meat and potatoes, which we took care of as well. All right, guys, I'm going to be back. When? Next Monday. Maybe I'll have a guest or two, or you'll just hear my lovely voice for the whole duration. You have to wait and see, because I don't know what I'm going to do yet. In any event, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. As always, I can be found on Twitter at Jerry Mallory NFL. Pride Detroit, do a video here and there. I'll pop it on a podcast here and there. I've also got a Piston show, which me and my cousin Kevin will be doing very soon. Count that baby in the file. And as you know, every Monday right here, Hindsight 20, Detroit Lions podcast. Thanks again for listening. Until next Monday, I'm out of here.